You're standing at the edge of a conversation, and you can feel it happening again. That familiar tightness in your chest, the hyper-awareness of your own hands, your own face, the precise angle of your body in space. Everyone else seems to be moving through some invisible choreography you were never taught. They're laughing, leaning in with effortless timing, building rapport like it's breathing. And you're calculating, monitoring every word before it leaves your mouth, wondering if it's too much, too little, too strange, too boring. Here's what nobody tells you about struggling to make friends. It's not about lacking social skills. It's about something far more painful. You learned somewhere in the architecture of your early life that connection is dangerous, that openness is a vulnerability you cannot afford. So you built a fortress of self-protection so sophisticated, so automatic, that you can no longer remember what it feels like to simply exist in another person's presence without the grinding machinery of self-surveillance running in the background. This is the core paradox, the very mechanism that protected you from early rejection, the hypervigilance, the self-editing, the preemptive withdrawal, has become the prison that keeps genuine connection perpetually out of reach. You survived by learning to reject yourself first. The thing that saved you is now the thing sabotaging you. When you struggle to make friends despite desperately wanting them, you're operating from what attachment theorists call an avoidant, anxious hybrid pattern. You crave connection, but instinctively pull away when it gets too close. You're simultaneously reaching for the door and slamming it shut. This develops through relational trauma conditioning. Perhaps you were excluded, mocked, or ignored as a kid. Your developing brain learned a brutal lesson. Authentic self-expression leads to abandonment. So you developed what Dr. Gabor Mate calls self-abandonment as a survival strategy. You learned to read rooms with forensic precision, predict rejection before it happened, and engineer your own withdrawal to avoid the sharper pain of being left. Neuroscientific research shows that people with histories of social rejection show heightened activity in brain regions that process physical pain when anticipating social interaction. Your brain literally experiences the possibility of rejection as a threat equivalent to bodily harm. You've learned to relate to yourself as an object to be managed rather than a subject to be expressed. In conversations, you're not present. You're monitoring your performance, editing in real time, calculating the acceptable bandwidth of your personality. The cost of this self-protective isolation is a specific kind of suffering our culture has no name for. It's the grief of being surrounded by people while feeling fundamentally unseen. It's the exhaustion of wearing a persona so consistently that you can no longer locate the authentic self beneath it.
Carl Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself. This is your private agony, your performing connection, while your actual self remains locked in solitary confinement. You sacrifice authenticity for the illusion of belonging. But here's the cruel mathematics. The more you hide yourself to be accepted, the less the acceptance means. Even when you succeed at making friends, there's a hollow victory, a voice that whispers, they wouldn't like me if they knew. The core fear? That your authentic self is fundamentally unlovable. So you compress yourself. You become smaller, quieter, more palatable. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You perform interest in things that bore you, not out of deception, but out of a desperate conviction that the real you will trigger the abandonment you've spent your life trying to avoid. These are not personality traits. These are coping mechanisms that once protected you, but now confine you. You over-prepare for every social interaction. You rehearse conversations, script responses, plan exit strategies. Spontaneous hangouts feel impossibly reckless when your nervous system perceives every social situation as a minefield. You read too much into everything. They took 3 hours to text back. Do they hate you? They didn't laugh at your joke. Are you annoying? You're constantly scanning for evidence of your unworthiness, and because you're looking for it, you find it everywhere. You self-sabotage budding friendships. Just when connection starts to feel real, you withdraw. You stop texting first. You decline invitations. Better to choose loneliness than risk the sharper pain of being chosen against. You only have surface-level friendships. You know 100 people, but feel known by none. You've perfected being pleasant and agreeable, but you've never learned how to be real. Depth requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires the very thing your nervous system has learned to avoid, the risk of being seen and rejected. You overgive than you receive. You're always initiating, planning, remembering birthdays, not because you're naturally generous, but because you've learned that your value lies in your utility, that if you stop being useful, you'll be forgotten. The path to unlearning begins with one crucial step, witnessing the pattern without judgment, not fixing or forcing, just seeing it, seeing how young you were when you learned this, seeing that you're not broken, you're brilliantly adapted to an environment that taught you connection was dangerous. Healing doesn't mean becoming extroverted. It means slowly teaching your nervous system that connection can be safe, that you can be seen without being destroyed. This is inner child reparenting, becoming the consistent, attuned, accepting presence you needed when you first learned to hide. It means shadow work, reclaiming the parts you deemed too weird, too intense, too much, understanding that your wholeness includes your strangeness, and the right people will not be repelled by your authenticity. Start small. Practice micro-vulnerabilities. Share one true thing. Express one genuine preference. Say no to something you'd normally agree to out of fear. Notice what happens. Most of the time, nothing catastrophic occurs, and slowly your nervous system begins to update its ancient threat assessment. Choose softness over performance. Instead of trying to be interesting, try being interested. Paradoxically, the less you focus on yourself, the more you become authentic. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron wrote, "The most fundamental harm we can do to ourselves is to remain ignorant by not having the courage to look at ourselves honestly and gently." Your healing is not about becoming someone else. It's about having the courage to stop abandoning yourself. The goal is not to be fixed. The goal is to be whole. You are not fundamentally unlovable. You are fundamentally self-protected. And the most radical act of healing is learning to slowly, carefully lower the drawbridge of that fortress and discover that the world outside is full of people who have been waiting for someone exactly as beautifully, strangely, imperfectly real as you. If this resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your struggle to connect is not evidence of your defectiveness. It's evidence of how deeply you long for true belonging. And that longing, that's the most human thing about you.